What's going on, everybody? Kasabi from Showzone here, and in some of our past episodes, we've alluded to one of the statistics that we have on our website called True Overall. This takes into consideration the weights of a player's ranking based on the attribute scores that the developers at San Diego Studio apply to players. You might have seen a few of the cards go over 100, and that's because the game is limited to 99, but it would assess their attributes if they were to go over that 100 mark. A lot of the endgame cards that you see in the game are going to be anywhere from 105 all the way up to maybe 120, for example. However, the one thing that True Overall might fall flat in is even though a card might be rated a 115, it might not be the best card to use based on the meta of the current game. Our developers at Showzone have been working tirelessly over the last year and a half, and we finally have a new metric that we're about to introduce to our website called Meta Overall. This is going to be different from True Overall, so you're not going to see a lot of cards over 100. The Meta Overall is scaled 0 to 99. What 0 implies is a card that you should never use ever in competitive play, and 99 is a truly endgame card considered at parallel 5 value. So for right now in MLB The Show 22, we take into consideration hitters for both power and speed, while for pitchers, pitch velocity, sinkers, and cutters tend to be the current meta. So players with a lot of those attributes are going to be weighted a bit more heavily than others. Also taken into consideration are switch hitters, people who can hit from both sides of the plate, and also active quirks that certain players tend to have. So what this means is for True Overall, you might see some cards like Robbie Ray's monthly awards cards last year, who was at the very top of the pile in terms of his overall score. Cards like Robbie Ray will no longer be considered an endgame card and will instead be considered by our Meta Overall metric. You can use both to your advantage, and I'll go over the pros and cons in just a bit, but first, let's introduce you to some of the current cards that we have, such as collection rewards for MLB 22. So for example, at starting pitcher, the endgame card would be the Collection Reward 99 Signature Series Randy Johnson. A lot of players might think that since he's a 99 and the Collection Reward that he might be usable all year long, which isn't necessarily the case. Based on our Meta Overall score, he is considerably the best pitcher in the game right now in May 2022, but his overall score out of 99 is a 76.93, meaning later in the year you might have some cards that are higher in the 90s and are considered an endgame card. Randy Johnson falls a bit more flat once we move midway or even later into October. Randy Johnson throws very hard, has some power at the plate as a batter. We also take into consideration speed, even for pitchers, like their speed on the base paths. But he only has one outlier, but no sinker or cutter combination, which sinker and cutters tend to be used most by competitive players and are usually used heavily in online competitive play. Next on the list for starting pitchers, surprisingly, is 92 overall postseason Orel Hershiser, who is a 69.20. Hershiser is better than some cards that are rated higher in the game, such as 93 Breakout Series Clayton Kershaw and 93 Prime Carlos Carrasco, because he has a sinker and cutter combo that a lot of pitchers don't tend to have. Right now, the best card that we would consider an endgame card is Frank Thomas, who tops out at an 84.87, so still a bit of a ways away from that 99 ranking that the Meta Overall tends to top out at. You can also see pretty quickly why people feel the current cards in the game are underwhelming. Last year's Live Series collection reward was 99 awards Chipper Jones, and his Meta Overall was a 90.48 before any parallels. So there's a considerable difference between the 99s that we have in MLB 22 and last year's in MLB 21. We'll also use a couple of catchers as an example. So we have an 88 overall Joe Mauer for the Cover Athlete collections, and we'll pair that up with 83 Live Series Yasmani Grandal. Grandal is actually rated better in Meta Overall because he's a switch hitter, has a lot more power, and 5 active quirks. So while Mauer might look like the better option as the 88 Diamonds, you'd actually be better off using Yasmani Grandal for more consistent competitive play. You may have watched our series called Best in Show, where we went over the top cards in the game based on True Overall. Going forward, we're going to be using the rankings using both True Overall and Meta Overall, so you can kind of see the differences between the cards at each position. So what does Meta Overall differ from in terms of our True Overall ranking? Well, again, True Overall rates players based on the San Diego Studio attribute system. What the Meta Overall does is takes a look at players who you might get early in the cycle and sees how long you can use them further on down the line into the cycle of the game. Eventually, a lot of those players will be replaced by other players further down the line, since as the game continues, you're going to get a lot more 99 overall cards. This can be very smart in terms of investing time into paralleling cards, because if you get a card that's a 99 overall, but their Meta Overall is very low, That means there's more than likely going to be a better card option available, and soon. So for example, you might have Albert Pujols, who is one of the best cards on the market right now at a 95 overall in left field, but there are 6 better options than him that could potentially play left field based on their meta overall. I know a lot of you watching aren't going to put Mike Trout over in left field if you get him, but again, Pujols might have some similar hitting statistics to other hitters that are released later in the game, but his speed at like a 50 overall is going to detract from his usability further on in the game cycle. Again, this feature will be going live soon, and you'll be able to see with our videos which players are the best at each position using this metric on a monthly basis. If you have any questions on meta overall, feel free to let us know in the comment section, but again, this is something that will be ever changing as the meta of the game changes, and for right now, most competitive players are going to be using pitchers with high velocity, sinkers, and cutters. It remains to be seen if the meta will continue into future iterations of MLB The Show, but again, we'll be right there with you guys, changing the formula as needed as the game progresses onward into this cycle and future cycles of the game. For more tools, including true overall, meta overall, player databases, and comparison tools, be sure to visit our website at showzone.io. That's all for now. Kasabi from Showzone signing off, and for more updates to our website, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter.